Hi everyone, Niklas Heidloff here from IBM and OpenNTF. Last week I blogged about the new REST APIs for Domino and XPages, and today we published the first release of these REST APIs on OpenNTF. And when I say we, I really mean the developers and architects Dave, Rama, Steven and also Phil. So the REST APIs are part of the extension library, and when you now install the extension library you will get these services also directly installed. Now one thing you need to know is that these services only work on 8.5.3 and you need to use the code drop 5 at this point. There is a document with 37 pages that describes a lot of these things in detail. And on this page it gives an overview of the different types of REST services. There are three different ones: Domino Data Service, XPages REST Services Control, and a custom database servlet. And in this video I'm going to describe all three at least briefly. So let's start with the first one, the Domino Data Service. The Domino Data Service is the REST API that you want to use if you want to access Domino and data in Domino databases from non-XPages, from all other types of third-party applications. And this service is deployed globally on the Domino server, again as part of the extension library. And let me show you how this works. There is a simple sample program part of the extension library which is called Domino Access Services Nodes Peak, and in here in this first column there you can see the list of databases on my server, and right here I have selected a database, my test database, which has only one view and one subject, and all of that data has been read now via REST APIs. Now you can see that by opening tools like Firebug, and then when I do this again, when I click on here, you can see that three REST API calls just happened. The first one was to read all the collections in the database. The second one was to read the design of the selected view. And the third one was to get the view entries of that specific view. Okay, now I can open these and see the response right here as plain text, or even there is the simple JSON viewer as part of this tool. You can also just read the source code of this sample file, and as you can see it uses the Dojo data grid control and the Dojo JSON REST store. And I don't want to go through all the details, but essentially you define the URL, and then you create this JSON REST store and bind it to the data grid control. Also, another way to find out what's going on is to use the second documentation. So in addition to the PDF, there's also a reference, a set of HTML files that explains how to set up all of these things. And most importantly, it documents all these different REST APIs. For example, this one, database collection get, is the one that was used also in the Nodes Peak tool to populate the left data grid with data. And here you can see the URL. You can see what additional parameters you can pass in, and you see information about the response and the properties that are returned. And maybe most importantly, there are always examples. So let me show you, or actually before I show you how to set this up, one more thing I wanted to point out is the other APIs that are available. So again, this one was the one to read the databases. Then you can access documents, you can read them, you can delete them, you can create new ones, and you can change them. The document collection is to create new ones. Then you have the ability to read the photos and views of a specific database, and you get the design for specific of these photos or views, and obviously you can read the view entries from these views and photos. So now, in order to use this functionality, you need to do a couple of things. First of all, for security purposes, and all of these things that I talk about now are for security purposes, so that people can't access the data of your applications that you have never thought would be possible to be accessed in this way. So by default, you can't use these services, and you have to enable them in a couple of different places. First of all, you need to enable them globally in your service internet sites or site. Right here, enabled services data. And then also, in addition to that, on each database you need to enable them. And one thing you need to do is to set some INI variable that is documented, so that you get these additional options here. Allow Domino data service, and here you can even define whether it's not possible at all, or only possible for views, or even documents. So that's what you need to do on database level. And in addition to that, you actually also have to do it on the view level. Where was it? Here, allow Domino data services operations, right? And that's why it only works here for my sample database, the test database. But when I try to open another one, I actually get an exception. And when I read this exception, it no, that was the wrong run. When I read the response, it tells me it was forbidden because I didn't allow that database to be accessed. And also, one thing I didn't mention was that obviously you need to authenticate first, and if you're not authenticated, you get prompted to do so. So that was the first of these three different REST API or REST services. Okay, the second REST service type is the XPages REST Services control. This is a control that can be embedded in your XPages and consumed in your XPages very easily. And there are a couple of advantages. One advantage is that you can add additional parameters. For example, you can add a category filter when you access view entries. And also you can bind these services very easily to Dojo UI controls like the data grid control. The documentation also describes these different services. Again, these are the same ones as previously, the database collection, view collection, etc. And I can show you now how this works. There is an extension to the demo application that comes with the extension library. There's a new tab for REST. And here I can click on data service and invoke all these services easily. This one brings up the collection of databases as previously. And one thing I didn't show earlier is how to invoke the servers to read a document. This is what you see here, list of these built-in properties, but then also custom properties, or items or fields, or however you call them. So let's see how this looks in the Domino Designer. Let me open this one here to read the view entries. This one is selected. Well, first of all, I need to give it a name, and so that I can address it, and I need to define the path info, because the way you address the service later is HTTP Domino server, and then the name of the database, the name of your XPage, the .xsp is missing here, and then your path. And that URL is then actually also accessible from other pages or even other types of applications. So once you have done that, in the next step you define or choose one of these 5 available services right here. And as I also mentioned, you can define additional parameters like category filter, columns, count, etc. So let's see what else. Going back to the demo application, there is another advantage of these services. Now when I invoke this sample here, it brings up not only a list of columns in that view or of that view entry, but additionally some other columns that are really not part of the view. And the way this works is, which one is that? This one here. And I press this one. And when I switch to the source view, you can see again I define an ID, a path info, and then in addition to that, for the Vue.json service, I define here my additional columns. And a column can actually be again a column from a view, but it doesn't have to. It can also be any arbitrary server-side JavaScript or whatever else you want. So here you could do joins or get data from any other sources. And let's see, there was one more thing I wanted to show. Right, another advantage of this mechanism is that you can bind the services easily to the Dojo data grid control. Now in this case, I can change something here and save it, and those changes are actually saved back to the database. So I can create new items, I can change items, I can delete items, etc. And this is very easy to use. So this is the XPage that you just saw. So again, the first thing is you define your REST service, which is here. You give it a path and you give it an ID, and you point it to the right view, etc. And then in the data grid control, which is here, you can now bind it via the store component ID. So again, this is the ID of the REST service that we just defined, and that's really as easy as it is to build a nice UI and to bind JSON data from a Domino database to a Dojo data grid control. Okay, the third type of REST service is what we call a custom database servlet. It's a servlet implemented via Java in your Java perspective, but it lives in your NSF. And the advantage here is that you have the maximal flexibility in terms of what you want to return. You can return whatever you want in whatever format you want. So let's see how this works. First of all, again, a sample. The sample application has this custom servlet button, which invokes my own servlet, which lives in my NSF. So the address is the my server and database name, and xsp/services is always the same address. And then I give it a name. I give my servlet a name, and I can pass in parameters. And in this case, it returns view entries, but again, it could return whatever I want. So in Designer, what you need to do first of all is switch to your Java perspective, and then there is a file servlet factory where you define the class name of your servlet factory. And what this is not a real servlet, if you want. It's not a Java class that extends the HTTP servlet class, but it's something that comes very close. It's a factory, and you can have basically multiple servlets within this one factory, or de facto servlets. And this is the one that I just showed, all contacts, and this is the name that is the same name as in the URL. And in here I get the same objects passed in, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, and in here I can do whatever I want. And this is just a very simple example that again calls an XML service, but again it could be anything. The interesting thing is that you can also call all of these services that we provide also directly via Java API. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you provide feedback, and let us know what you think. Thanks a lot for your attention.